Yo, 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 what is up? What is up? YouTube, boxing family, gaming family, it is IK right here. Back at it with another gaming video. Well, yeah, this is more like a life talk, video for y'all. I just wanted to kind of talk about some stuff that's on my mind to get out off of, just a vent and also just to get it out to the ether. But yeah, man. I'm watching a live stream by YouTuber Quante. If you guys don't know who he is, for any of you League of Legends fans, he's definitely one of the he's a high elo League of Legends streamer that's a Urgot main that mostly does top lane. I don't think he does mid lane or other roles, but I'm pretty sure he's pretty good at doing them depending on what he does. But basically, he's a very good streamer, and I'm actually watching his, live stream where he's doing a high elo challenge, while he's in, I want to say like Paris, France, on the EU West, server. So, he's getting close to Challenger, which is like I think like 19 plus 100 LP. But other than that, definitely check him out, and he's a really good player, and I definitely like watching his gameplay. But before we get into the video, be sure to like, rate, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, man, I definitely like appreciate y'all supporting. And yeah, let's get right into it. So yeah, so for today's pep talk that we got for today is it's a pretty interesting topic. I've always thought of this in the job market world where I don't always really know if this is a good move or not, but this is more in relation to like the work, career choice, life, topics that most people discuss about. But for this topic, I'm going to be debating whether is it necessary for you to put your 2 weeks in when you're trying to switch for a different job. And this is a very iffy topic because usually 9 times out of 10, everybody would just say, yes, it should be necessary for you to give a, current employer to say that, that you're leaving within 2 weeks so you can go to a different job. And to me personally, I disagree with that. I think, personally, with me, when it comes to any means of finding jobs, let's just say if you work at a standard job that you don't like. Obviously, let's just say you work at some warehousing job that pays you like, let's just say $17 and change, or 18.50, or 19 bucks. But you end up having some experience with, like, let's just say clerical work, becoming a administrative like assistant, for maybe some governmental agencies, or maybe businesses that give you some experience to like get into that field, and you were offered a much better job from another company that saw your resume that pays you like, let's just say 25 to $30 an hour, and if you're there with them longer, you get bumped up to like 45 bucks, like an hour. um 9 times out of 10, let the quote unquote normal person, well, I wouldn't even say normal, people that are stuck into the 9 to 5 professionalism mindset, they say you should put your 2 weeks in and therefore just do it. So therefore you leave on good terms. But personally with me, if that employer never liked you in the first place, but you're doing your job to be where you're at, then you don't have to stay there. You can very well leave at any given point because, granted, knowing that I'm kind of speaking from a like American perspective, because this isn't like a common thing with other nations, but maybe like let's just say one day out of the blue, if you find yourself a better job and you really want to go for that job and start working with them, you're going to like press, the action in wanting to work for that company because you have a lot of, interests in working for the business. And, if you're putting in the work, putting so many applications out online, which, granted, look, the biggest issue, at least in the West, primarily within the United States, is that it's very difficult to quote unquote find a job because so many businesses are putting job openings out there, but they're usually just ghost jobs. So it's really difficult to kind of like get your footing on what type of market that you're really trying to compete for. So, when you're trying to go for those like high tier level jobs that pay very well, especially even at a entry level, it's still difficult because businesses are trying to make all these weird, excuses, to say that, oh, well, we're so sorry, but we found other candidates that match with the experience, that we're looking for. But, best believe, they didn't really find like, anybody better. They're just trying to like cut as many applications as possible so they could just try to find like the least skilled applicable candidate. And then once they pick that person, then they're going to try to cut as many people as possible to give them very few opportunities because they don't know what they're looking for. But again, if you are working at a job that you don't like and you choose to leave before your 2 weeks, or if you don't want to give your 2 weeks and just go straight at it, some people do that. Some people do feel like, okay, well, you know what? Why the hell should I be working for a company that is going to give me the benefit of, well, not even like, oh man, like how should I properly say this? Like companies that will try to find ways to fire you, they will try to find a means to cut you off, as quickly as a possible. And then, I'll kind of use like the US as a good example because there are certain states within the US that has like certain laws in place where they're basically like a right to well, how should I say? They're basically like a fire at will state. And what that means is that a fire at will state is that an employer has the quote unquote right to fire you at any given like a point of time within your tenure, how should I say, of employment that you're working with that that a company. And they can make that decision to say, okay, well, like we don't need to really keep you here, but but oh man, like I'm very sorry. Um, yeah, because I'm just trying to get so many thoughts, like, put in. But businesses will try to find that means to try to, like, get rid of you because they either don't want to be honest with you with their standards of who they are trying to hire, but then they're trying to find some other means where other people that don't like you, at a particular company will just try, like, how should I say, they're trying to be snarky to try to find some means to try to fire you. So it's like that's exactly what so many businesses like to do because they're either trying to cut positions, so therefore they can try to find some excuse, to say, oh, well, like we're, basically struggling to find people or to even keep people because, like, our company, size is, getting bigger, but our, expenses, to keep people are getting too, expensive long term, which, I'm not going to get into the whole economics behind that. But the truth is that businesses that do find the means to try to fire you are trying to do that because basically whatever's going on through the executive management within most particular bigger bigger companies, they try to use this like corporatist mindset, which is extremely socialist in principle, where they're trying to find means to cut corners, but they're doing it for the wrong reasons, where they're trying to make sure that you are not having a opportunity to work at a particular job that you do love, and versus like if you're at a job that you don't like and you know that you're better than everybody else at that job, but yet those people are finding means to try to be dickheads to you to get you fired, that just shows that that company is a piece of shit company. And therefore, you don't need to be with them. You don't have to stay with them. But the truth is that no, like you have a right to leave. But if a company claims to say like, oh, well, we have like a right to fire you at like, I should say any given point, then yeah, you don't need to put in like your 2 weeks. You can just get up and leave because it's more like, look, If you were offered $1 million to work at some company that said, hey, look, we see that you have some really good experience with doing, let's just say, trading, trading equities or trading whatever. And here at such and such company, we will offer you at least up to, $1 million worth of your salary. But to start out, you're probably going to start out at 250K, but within blah, 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 X amount of years in such and such, you will make up to this amount. And I'm pretty sure, a lot of people go through really good job interviews and they get offered really good high salary income positions. But think about it. If you have a big job right in front of you and you are staying at some other job that you don't even care for and you can easily walk out and leave without putting your 2 weeks in, because, pretty much what the thing is like, your current employer is not the main employer that you need to put down whenever you're putting anything on your particular resume. You could just say maybe throughout the time being while you're looking for jobs, maybe you were in school and you could basically make up whatever you want on your job resume as long as it's kind of syncing up properly to say, okay, like what have you been doing up to this point? Or maybe if you want, you could just probably say, hey, like, I decided to take a break from working, and I've been working on, like my own particular YouTube channel, just basically making content. But, like I have such and such, experience in X, Y, and Z. But it's like the truth is that if you're working at any company that you don't like and you see like a way better job to leave to go to a better business, you should have the ultimate right to leave whenever you want. And the truth is like, yeah, you can. It's just that some idiots out there in the world that want to be loyal to a business, they'll say, no, if you don't give your 2 weeks in to a company, to your current employer to move to a better, different, employer, then that can look bad on your background check where businesses can take a look at that, which I personally don't believe that's even true because I actually do remember where I actually had like a good opportunity to work at like a different, job per se, where, I was working at one place and then I had like another opportunity to work for the state. And just to generalize it, I ended up not showing up to that job and I just decided to go to the other job and just keep it because I was working two jobs, at once. But I was like super young back then, so I wasn't really thinking like about that. But still, it's just more like, that the truth is that you have plenty of opportunities to go for bigger jobs. And if you want to get out of your, boring job that is really terrible, the shitty people that work with you are there, and therefore you don't really have like a means to like really enjoy what you want to do, then get out. You don't need to be there. You can easily just say, you know what, screw it. Why should I be working at some company that I don't, that you don't particularly enjoy, and just go to a better business? Because the truth is like the people that don't like you, that see you rise and you're looking for better opportunities, and they know that you're better than everybody sitting at that job, you don't need anybody around you other than yourself to say, I don't need to fucking be here. And the truth is that you really don't. You can get up and go. Now, for people that say, no, you should put in your 2 weeks, so therefore, it is a professional means to give your 2 weeks to leave on good terms. That's not always, to be the case because I actually do remember when I used to be younger, like I want to say maybe like my early teens, maybe like leading into at least 16 or 17 years old, but I do remember people telling me growing up back in school where they used to have jobs working at like basically food, food service, companies, whether it's like an ice cream shop or some particular restaurant that they used to work at. But like whenever they get, like another job and they're trying to put their 2 weeks in to leave, some employers will just basically fire you just to say, oh, you're leaving us. Well, like we don't need to have you here. Like we're just gonna fire you. And it's like, why? Like, you found a better job, and therefore you're like, wait a minute, why am I getting fired while I'm putting my 2 weeks in to find me a better job? So it's like, I think that's really the biggest issue, especially within, American culture, is that too many people are very loyal to thinking that you need to give an employer more of your time to work at a better job. And the truth is no, you don't. You don't have to do that. You don't have to be loyal to any company. You can say F you to them and literally just walk out. Now, the biggest issue is okay, well, okay, like, yeah, like, okay, Mr. Smart Guy, K Rod, or, whoever is making this particular claim, how can I find myself like another job? Or, like, basically, let me try to like reset the particular scenario. If you were like, yo, I hate this job, I hate working at, let's just say, Lowe's or basically BJ's, and you just wanted to be that type of like low IQ young kid out of school. Let's just say you just graduated high school, but you just don't know what to do. But like you deal with like basically you deal with those type of jobs where a lot of people get on your nerves and you just can't seem to like get things right because psychologically there's certain people in the world that are trying to piss you off, and let's just say you end up just quitting. But like that you have good experience, that you have the capability to work, but it's just certain people that get on your nerves where you're just like, no, like, I'm just going to quit and just find myself like a different job to figure everything out. And ideally, how do you properly recover from quitting a job that you don't like to find a better job? And the truth is that yes, like if you don't like your job and you want to quit, you have a right to do that. Now, as far as quote unquote getting another job, what you could do is that you could just put onto your resume to say like, hey, I worked at my previous, employer, which, some people usually do this. And, I would say for the most part, a lot of people do this, but you just really take out like like your old employer that you just ended up quitting or you ended up getting fired off of some BS, which, a lot of people do, like, especially like, in a worldwide sense, but I would say domestically in the US, like, yeah, a lot of people have those, particular stories for that. But what you could do is that you could really put down whatever extra experience that you may have to say, oh yeah, like I used to do side work, on the side, working with family, having to, be like a landscaper, or at least like say something like that to say like, you just did something to kind of keep yourself busy while you're looking for, another job. Because at least that way, if you kind of like put it in like that, you could just say that you did that during the time, yeah, during that particular time frame. But let's just say if you want to make the claim to say that like you're working on going, going to school or going to college, or at least like saying that, like now that you took time off from working and you're working on certificates, that's another good way to like basically fix up your job resume, to like not really like put down that particular means to say, oh, well, like what was your gap, blah blah blah. Like no, like you could just say I was going through schooling. I'm doing schooling to get, to get certificates, or you could possibly just say that you have some experience with doing landscaping, at a family, like, family houses. So like you get paid doing that. So, I mean, like there's plenty of ways to like get around like the, job resume gap, but what the truth is that if you know what you're doing and you know what you're basically arguing for within your, job resume, then I think it's like, I think it's perfectly fine. Now the truth is that when you are looking for another job, you just have to make sure that when you're interviewing with employers, you don't really say anything that you don't need to put out there. Don't ever say to employers like, okay, like, I left my last job because, this, X, Y, and Z manager was a piece of shit, blah blah blah. Because I mean, how should I say it? Like a lot of people always like to say that, and That's never to really be the smart thing to do. Ideally, you should always just try to say like, okay, like, obviously, like the most common thing that employers like to ask is like, why are you leaving this job to come to this job? And usually, the best answer is to say like, you're seeking newer, like how should I say, like you're seeking better employment so you can get better opportunities to advance to a better career. Always try to use good answers and try to be very stern with your answer, because when you say something that you're not too sure if you really believe it, or employers like to play with the mind game of like trying to trick you into a question where if you're not too sure how to answer it, they try to make you feel confused. And the truth is that you should never say that. You should always try to be as, how should I say, like try to be assertive and try to be very focused with like how you answer it. Ideally, it's always important to prioritize the questions that are very, how should I say, very easy to answer. And then once you're able to develop a good social relationship with the interviewer, to have like a good vibe with the interview, then that's where you'll put yourself in a much better position to become more successful in particularly achieving the job that you want. And then you don't have to like be stuck in this mindset of saying, okay, well, I need to put my 2 weeks in and just wait for the employer to like find somebody else. And I mean, the truth is like, no, like you don't have to be doing that. Like, like I've had plenty of jobs, before in the past where they were horrible businesses, but as soon as I found something better, I just didn't show up. I was just like, nope, see you later. I don't need to give you more of my time when I find something way better that's going to pay me a lot more. Obviously, it's always better to give 2 weeks, but ideally, I would probably even I would probably even say, if anything, you could probably just say, hey, I found myself like a different job. Tomorrow, will be like my last day. Or if you want to be much of like a crude, like crude person to your like employer, you could just say today is my last day, and then you could just basically wait it out until you get that new job. And honestly, you don't need to do anything from that point on. Now, is that smart to do? Of course not. When you have like bills and you have to keep everything saved up with what you do with having like your own like apartment and all that. But personally, if you don't like your job and you know that you don't need to be stressed out coming into work, then, I would say take the risk and just say no, like I'm not going to do that. Like truth is like, you don't have to really stay with an employer that you don't like. It's just that a lot of people, especially in the Western world, like specifically in the US, is that a lot of people are too fool minded to think that you need to give an employer time to leave. And the truth is, no. A lot of employers like to screw you over, so therefore they could find a reason to try to like basically like give you, the benefit, well, how should I say, not give you the benefit of leaving, on a proper time frame, whenever, they're trying to fire you. So it's like, whenever you're doing good at a company, but then some idiotic manager wants to find some stupid reason, to fire you, they're going to find some stupid BS reason to try to fire you on the spot, and they're not going to give you time to leave. So it's like, why the hell should you be waiting, on management? Or basically, oh man, like, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have to give your management 2 weeks, to leave, to say, hey, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. So after that, I'm gone. No, you can leave whenever the hell you want, because, to me personally, your time is your money, and your time is your particular investment with what you want to do. So if you know that you have a way better job opportunities that are willing to give you more money and you could work for them as soon as possible, then yeah, go for it. Go get that money. Because guess what? like, those crappy like employers that claim to say that, oh well, like we care about our like, like employees and all this other BS, that they like to say like, times can get rough, and employees will like to make like a hard time to like make people like have problems X, Y, and Z. Like, nah, bro, fuck that. If you have a better skill that you can go for, and you don't need to be with a shitty employer that's going to try to screw you over, then you don't have to be there. You don't have to be there. You can get up and leave. You are what you are worth. Like, basically, to try to simplify this so I can basically finalize this just to get out of here, you are worth more than for what you think. And if you know what you're worth and you know what you're capable of doing, then anything is possible. Like Kevin Garnett, has once said, in the NBA. So I think that is a true axiomatic principle that not many people put themselves like, into, because too many people are too, like afraid of taking ownership to speak up and actually like actually be confident in what they're trying to speak up for. So therefore, they're not having to be subjugated to some employer at a job trying to tell them, no, you have to be loyal to us. You can't just leave us like, like whenever you want. But no, don't worry. If we like, if you do something wrong, at like, at our company, we're going to fire you, and we're not going to give you time to find a different job, and we're just going to fire you on the spot. So therefore, it's going to be harder for you to find a different job. So yeah, screw that shit. F all these stupid, like employers. Like I've been there before, in my younger days, and I will tell you, it is not worth giving 2 weeks to an employer when you could find yourself a quicker job and better job where you could start literally right away with a different employer, and you don't need to stay with some crappy, piece of shit like employer that's not going to give you the benefit of trying to find a different job when they're trying to fire you. So it's like, no, I don't need to be working for a extra 2 more weeks. I can just go somewhere else and just say, hey, okay, like I'm done. And then let's just say you tell about the new job, okay, well, I'll be ready within 2 weeks, and then you could just sit back, chill, at your house, and then basically start in 2 weeks. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I know that like no, that was like a pretty long particular video, but I wanted to kind of like vent that out and kind of tell you guys how I feel. And yeah, it's been on my mind. It's been bothering me lately because some like some stupid idiots on, I want to say, YouTube like to talk about that BS. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think, and I will catch you guys later. And yeah, man, I'm out. So yeah, this is K Rod 7435 signing out, and I will see you guys. Peace.